Hey folks, welcome in. This is Chris with Alpenglow Digital. In today's video, we are going to look at setting up an approval workflow in Power Automate. The way this is going to work is we have a SharePoint list. We're going to watch that list, and when a new item is submitted, we're going to kick off an approval step, and that will send somebody a card that looks like this via email. The person that's responsible for approving will have the option to approve or reject something. When it is approved, it will come through this true side of the tree, and we're going to update the SharePoint list item with a few values, and we're going to shoot off an email. Again, this is just going to be a small example. You can build this out to be much more complex if you want, but we're going to keep things short and simple for this video. So without further ado, let's go. Hey folks, welcome into Power Automate. Before we jump into creating our flow, I want to give a little bit of context for how this project is kind of running in the background. We have a super simple Power App that we built in a different video. When folks fill this out and hit submit, it's going to populate a SharePoint list. And then what we're hoping to accomplish in this video is when something is submitted, we want to send an approval request to someone. In this case, it'll probably be me. And then when they approve or reject it, we will update the status of the request and then send off some emails. So let's jump into starting our flow. In past videos, we've elected to start from a blank template where you just choose how the trigger is set up for your flow and then add actions yourself. But I want to take advantage of Microsoft's templates. They offer a bunch of them right out of the box. So if you're here in the Create tab within Power Automate, you have the option to search for templates, and we're just going to search for approval here. There are a bunch of options. Most of them are triggered by Microsoft Forms or SharePoint. A few things, maybe like a button click within Power Apps. The one that I like to use for this particular use case is this one right up here. Send approval email when a new item is added. And you can see the little icons for all of the different elements that are going to be used in this. So it's going to have a SharePoint element. This is kind of in a Microsoft approval element. We'll delve into that in a little bit, and then an Outlook email. So let's click on that, and it will generate our flow for us. When you're building a flow from a template, you will often be taken to a screen like this. It shows all of the elements, shows kind of the trigger and then subsequent actions, and then it will ask you to verify kind of connections to these different elements. So in this case, what email do you want to use for your SharePoint connection or Outlook? And then for approvals, you do need to set up your own little connection. It probably just says something like connect, and it'll use an alias that you are logged into. Then we will hit continue, and we'll be taken to our Power Automate dashboard. When we initially land here on our workspace or dashboard, you will see all of the elements that it gave us right out of the box. So we have our trigger, which is connected to SharePoint when an item is created. We have our approval step, and then we have an apply to each, which is kind of a loop. And the reason that this is a loop is because the output from your approval step could be one output or it could be multiple outputs. And if it is multiple outputs, you would then want to kind of loop through what to do with each of those responses. In our case, we're going to do something simple, so we won't actually need to loop through anything, but I'm going to keep this the way it is for now. Let's start by clicking into our SharePoint trigger. It's going to ask us for the site address and the list name that this flow is going to watch and look for new requests to be submitted to. We have an event planning assistance site, and the list name is event planning requests. And so now you can see that little error go away. The next step is going to be the approval step. So it's going to watch for when a new item is submitted. In our case, it's through a Power App. It populates the SharePoint list, and then it triggers this approval. When you open up the approval step, you'll see a number of options here on the left. The first is the approval type. And this is going to really indicate when is this approval step done. In our first option, everyone must approve, so you could send this approval to a number of people. We don't want this step to complete and for you to move on to the next step until everybody approves, or it might be sent to a group, and all it matters is that somebody responds and approves. So in this case, the first to respond would then consider this step complete and move on to the next step, or you can add some custom responses here. And for our video, we are simply going to say first to respond because we are actually only going to send this approval to a single person. But you could send it to a team or a number of kind of folks that are involved in your process if you wanted to, and wait for everybody to respond. But we're going to keep things simple, only require one response, and then we're going to move on to title. Some of these fields will make a little bit more sense once you actually see what an approval email looks like in your inbox. The title is going to be at the very top of the approval email. And what's nice is because we're in Power Automate, we can use dynamic values from some of our prior steps. So maybe I want my title to be approval request, And I'm going to do colon event planning assistance. And then maybe I want to give it an ID from our SharePoint list. So if you come in here, you can see all the options from a prior step, and we're going to put the ID in there and we'll close that out. So now somebody knows right away which ID they are referring to. We are going to enter in an assigned to person. So this is going to be the person that receives the approval email and is responsible for accepting it or rejecting it. I am by my lonesome here. I'm going to send it to me. And then the details are kind of the body of the email, if you will. It doesn't look quite like a normal email will. We'll see that in a second. But for now, let's just punch in a little bit more information and see what one looks like, and then we'll come back and augment this a little bit. So I'm not going to worry about updating details. This will pull in the body title, which is going to be the title of the event that was submitted. The link to the item is going to be, if you want to, we can link to the actual SharePoint list item. So if you come in here and say link to item will give you the link to the specific SharePoint list item that triggered this step right here. And then item link description, which again, this will make more sense once you see an output, is kind of the text that is visible. So instead of giving them just a big URL to look at, I want to say review the request. And again, we'll take a look at what this translates to in the approval, and then you can add a couple of other advanced parameters here if you'd like, but I think this looks good for now. So let's trigger this and see what it looks like. I did submit a test request through Power Apps into the SharePoint list. One of the things that I had forgotten to do was in the apply to each, we have our condition and then our email step. And we, by default, of course, the to field is going to be blank. So I had to add myself before I could then save it and submit a test. So now that that step's done, let's take a look at what the test output looks like. Here is the output from our initial test. So it's going to come through into your inbox as kind of a card within an email. It's kind of an interesting experience because it is kind of its own component that's just kind of, in this case, embedded in Outlook. You can also do things through Teams or other products, which is kind of cool. So this little approval card comes through. It says approval request, and this is the kind of the custom title we gave it. It's requested by me in this case, gives you a timestamp for when it was created. And then here is the link where we said review the request, and then this links off to the actual SharePoint list item. We didn't touch the actual details section, which is kind of the body of your email, which you see right here. It just says, please approve this item. And then we have our options here to approve or reject. One thing I want to call out before we go and actually approve or reject an email is I want to show you what it looks like in Power Automate. So I have a flow running. You can see that it's sitting here. So it's triggered and it's awaiting approval. So none of these steps are going to proceed until we are done and have approved this. And so what you'll see in your flow history is that these tests are running. So they're not succeeded and they haven't failed. They're just in the midst of running. So if you had a bunch of tests and you're like, hey, I don't know if everybody's getting approvals, you come in here, look at all runs, see which ones are still in the process of running. You could add a column, maybe like the SharePoint list ID, which I think is helpful. And then look and say, hey, it looks like items 32 is still in need of running. Of course, it's the same because I've been rerunning the same test. But you could say, hey, item 32 is still running. We're awaiting a response. And then go nudge the person that's responsible for that. So to ensure you don't have to see all of my Outlook stuff, I just grabbed a couple screen grabs. So this is the approval that came through. I hit approve in this case. And then it gives me the option as the approver to leave some comments. In this case, I just said, okay, it looks good, go ahead. And when you hit submit, then your email, again, this is all done kind of dynamically within the card within Outlook, which is super cool. It then says, hey, you've approved this. Here's a timestamp for when it was submitted and the comments that you had. And then it will move on to the next step in our flow. So back in Power Automate, you can see that this has now succeeded. So where this was stuck running, it's now succeeded because the approval was given and it moved on to the next step. And so again, what this apply to each does is it takes all of the potential responses and runs through an action for each of those responses. In our case, because we chose just the first to approve, you're only going to see one response. And so this apply to each really isn't needed, but I'm just going to leave it here for now in case you do want to change your approval workflow to have multiple team members weigh in before proceeding. So the condition here then is based on your approval, if a positive value is given here, let's take a look at maybe through edit view. This will give us a little bit deeper context here. So if you come in here, the condition is if the response from the approver is approve, then that's true. And so you're going to move to this true tree. If it is not, so if you rejected it, then it would move to false. And then in this case, we have no action set up for false. But in our case, I did approve it. So it moved to this true tree and then sent off this little email, which I did get, which again, you can customize as much as you want. Right now, it just pulls in the title of the request and says, hey, it's been approved. So there are a couple of things that I want to do to kind of spruce this flow up to make it work a little bit better for my team. And the first is going to be updating the status of a request when it is approved or rejected. So let's do that quickly. So the way that I have my list set up right now is that when a request is initially submitted, it's going to have a default status of awaiting decision. And I want it to have that status when it is first created. And then when somebody approves it or rejects it, I want this status to be updated accordingly so that my team knows, hey, if stuff's been approved, go ahead and move forward. If it's been rejected, don't worry about it. We're not going to work on it. So we can accomplish that within Power Automate. And so again, we're going to open this up. We're going to come down to our true tree first. So again, you should update this email as you like. You could fit in a bunch of great information telling somebody, hey, your request has been approved. Here's the SLA, yada, yada. This could either go to the person that submitted the request, or it could go to your processing team that says, hey, this has been approved. Go ahead and start. We're not going to delve into that too much in this video. What we are going to do, though, is before we send an email, we are going to update this SharePoint list item and the status specifically to show that it has been approved. So we're going to come in here and hit another step. And the step is going to be called update, I think update item. Yes, update item. So again, this is going to be a SharePoint action. It's going to say, hey, where's this SharePoint list at? Again, same site, same list. And then we're going to give it the ID from this first step. So if you come in here to ID, click the lightning bolt, you will see the ID option here. So now it's going to go get the correct item from SharePoint, and then we need to update it. If you click show all, you will see a lot of the columns in our SharePoint list. And what we care about is the status value right here. So it's defaulted to awaiting decision. And if this has been approved, gone through our approval workflow, then we want to change the status to approved. So we can click out of that and save. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun that initial test. It's going to send me an email that asks me to approve it. I'm going to click approve, and then we are going to see if it updates our status in SharePoint. All right, I got another email. I clicked approve, and then I came back in here and refreshed it. So we can see that the status for Gary's 30th birthday bash has been changed from awaiting decision to approved. And so again, here's this particular flow. It runs through. I clicked approve, so it goes to the true tree. It updates the item and then sends an email. So the other thing that I like to do, again, you could go really down a rabbit hole if you wanted to. But the other thing that I find useful is you can capture the comments from the approver and add those to the SharePoint list item if you'd like to for tracking purposes. So maybe it's like approved, but make sure to check X, Y, and Z. And so what we can do here in the same step, the update item step where we're changing the status, if you open it here, go to show all, I have a field here called admin notes. And what I would like to do is capture the feedback at this approval step and enter them in the admin notes section and just save them for later. So if I click in here, go to the lightning bolt, you can see all of the options that you can get from the approval response. So you could get things like the timestamp or a particular like request date or response comments. And in our case, I do think it is the response comments that we want here. So what I'm going to do is save this. I'm going to go back over to SharePoint. I'm going to kind of restart this. So I'm going to click into here. I'm going to change the status back to, what did we have it before? Awaiting decision. Save that. We're going to retest it and see if, one, the status still changes to approved, which it should, and two, if it captures my response comments. Our flow ran again. This time it went through all the steps. No issues there. If we pop over to SharePoint, we will see here's Gary's 30th birthday bash. Again, the status has been changed to approve. And here in the admin notes is the comment that I left in the approval comment section within my little approval card. So it says, this looks like a great event. Please move forward. So what I like about that is, one, the team has a little bit of context for did I approve it? And if so, did I have any questions or concerns about the event? You could also capture that in your email step if you wanted to. You could say, hey team, this has been approved and here are my comments about the approval. Or that might be more helpful maybe in the rejection step, which is something like there's just too many people here for us to be able to accommodate this type of request, etc. And so you can do a whole bunch of different logic here within either tree. And again, if you're going to create a single approval workflow, you probably don't need this applied to each step, but it doesn't hurt in this case. Alrighty, folks, that does it for our quick little overview of workflows in Power Automate. We find this use case works great if you are responsible for a program or working on behalf of somebody responsible for a program, and you need that first line of defense or gatekeeper for your requests. You have somebody that takes a look initially and says, yes, this is appropriate, go ahead and start processing it, or no, maybe this is not appropriate, I'm going to reject it, or reach out to the person that submitted it and continue the conversation. We also, in addition to using email, find it really useful to post into a Teams channel. Maybe something gets approved, you update the SharePoint list item, and then a lot of your processing team is maybe in a Teams channel, and then you get pinged and says, hey, looks like request 82 is good to go. Go ahead and start working on it. A lot of use cases. Go out, tinker with things, find how this fits into your work. I hope it does. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.